All right, time for a video, and we are getting conspiratorial here. All right, we are going to let our freak flag fly. And what am I talking about? So, teaser, I guess. Clickbait. Yes, there is a conspiracy. People love conspiracies. There's thousands of them now, right? It used to be, conspiracies might be limited to there's something in the military-industrial complex there, that the Second World War was a conspiracy, or something like that. What are they conspiring to do with the Second World War? What are they conspiring to do with nuclear weapons? What's the conspiracy about HARP or one of the other technologies that humans have developed? What's the conspiracy about vaccines? What's the conspiracy about computers and Wi-Fi? Of course, 5G and all the, there's conspiracies about everything. Toothpaste, fluoride in water and toothpaste. So there's a conspiracy about everything because people love them. Now, there's a lot of psychological angles. People have studied conspiracy mindsets and conspiracists, people who harbor conspiratorial thinking. And they've studied them, and they've come up with various theories, hypotheses about why people not only collect conspiracies, but really eventually live their lives according to conspiracies. And they can't have enough of them. Once they start, pretty soon they have all of them. The Earth is flat, and the Arctic is off limits. You can't explore the Earth past the Arctic because beyond there is the firmament or whatever, right? And there's all these deep reasons about why nothing works the way you think it does. And people get warm fuzzies from that. They like it. They like conspiracies. And the more outlandish and wild and anti-intellectual and anti-science and anti-everything else that their conspiracies can be, the more readily they're received, because people want to believe that the message we're getting from science and technologists and government agencies, IPCC reports, all that is fake. They want to believe that all that is fake because it's too difficult to comprehend. Oh, and probably it points to bad outcomes. And it's much more fun and serviceable, meaning you can turn it on and off if you want to. If you want more conspiracies, you can always find more. If you had enough conspiracies, you can just tune them out because they're all fake. And you kind of all know that. There's always going to be somebody who can tell you that your current conspiracy that's driving you crazy is fake. You'll always find someone on the internet saying that. And then you can think, okay, fine. And that's one thing I don't have to worry about. And you can walk away from a conspiracy. So we use the collection of conspiracy theories and how many of them we can tolerate and which ones are giving us the most entertainment and which ones connect us to the most ardent communities and which ones give us more sense of community. We collect these around us to what? To insulate ourselves from the real corrosive influences of the real world. There is a reality out there, folks. Now, if you want to swaddle your interior space with conspiracies because you can control those. You can have more, you can have less, you can have different ones. You don't have to have the scary ones. You can just go with the ones like, who built the pyramids. You can just go with those because they can never be proven. They don't matter. It's just something you can, build your life around that's not going to harm anyone, not going to harm you. And you can give yourself some solace. People give themselves solace in a complex world, because the world really is complex. And you wouldn't have to look too hard to find a whole nother set of theorists, a whole nother set of psychoanalysts who will tell you that the amount of complexity that humans can handle is actually pretty small, kind of small. In design, which I was a designer for many years, in design there's sort of a rule of thumb. Human recognition can handle in a design, so a picture, right? A table with a basket of fruit and then, and a logo. And, so what are you trying to get people to think? What are you trying to get them to associate with your company, whatever? People can handle only so many elements on the screen. And the numbers is about 7 or 9. And we can actually do experiments with people and find out what is the limit of what they can look at a design and come away with what the design contained. and it's like 7 to 9 elements. But that applies in life as well. In life, people can handle so much complexity, and then when there's more than that, they can't handle it. And this applies to everybody. Unless you have really special training and you really live in a narrow silo of interests, you're going to become quickly overwhelmed by all of the complexity of the world, because the world is actually really complex. So swaddling ourselves in comfortable conspiracies is actually a defense mechanism. That said, and that said, fine. Now, some of those conspiracists take up arms or become violent because of their conspiracies. Some of those conspiracists become demagogues, national leaders, policymakers, and then they can do real harm to people. Once the comfortable conspiracies start to write policy, then you may have a problem. But for the most part, it's harmless. It's a hobby for most people. But you'd have been living under a rock not to notice that there is more and more and more conspiracies all the time. They are all equally fake. I mean, sometimes there's a kernel of truth to some of them, but they are almost entirely, completely made up on the spot. And they sound fun, and they make great stories when you're drinking beer with the buddies, but they're completely unhinged. 99% of them have no basis of any kind in any kind of reality, made up completely from whole cloth, often on the spot. People who are good storytellers make up novel conspiracies in seconds on the spot, and it's fun. And sometimes those then become internet memes. Now, that is not what this video is about. There is an actual conspiracy. There's a conspiracy that's going to get a lot of people killed. It's already working. People are already dying. And this can even be proven. Statistically, with data, with receipts. The conspiracy that's real is probably going to end up killing most of humanity. Now, I could make an argument, and I have, that most of those people would die anyway. So, is the conspiracy that is currently being spread the reason why those people are going to die? No. They were doomed in the first case. But I would like to argue that if we did not surround ourselves with comfortable conspiracies, and we looked at the problem directly, which is a real problem, which has its genesis and its existence in physics, which includes gravity, okay, and the shape of the Earth, which is round, it's a globe. So that kind of physics, the problem we're facing exists in physics, and we could, if we wanted to or were willing to, face the physics in the same way that we face gravity. When you're climbing a ladder, or when you're up on a roof, or you're in a tree, or you're jumping out of an airplane with or without a parachute, you should be aware of the existence of gravity. And people save themselves from injury and death every day by being aware of the existence of gravity. Just accepting the physics of that. And not going too high up on a ladder, not getting too close to the edge of the roof. People who understand and accept gravity as a reality of physics every day don't die, because they take care of themselves. The conspiracy that I am going to talk about today is a conspiracy to help you not be aware of something like gravity. And it is just as dangerous as if you didn't understand gravity, as if there was a conspiracy to not make you aware of gravity. And then when you came to the edge of a cliff, you just sailed out thinking you were a bird, or that gravity didn't apply. If there was a conspiracy to prevent people from understanding gravity or just accepting the evidence of gravity, you drop something, it hits the ground. If there was a grand conspiracy to explain all that away, then people would die by the millions. daily, every single day. People would die by the millions because they simply didn't understand that there was this thing called gravity. So what's the equivalent of that? That is the focus of an actual conspiracy, not a conspiracy to convince you there's not any gravity, but a different conspiracy to convince you there's something else that's not happening. And that's a conspiracy. It's a global conspiracy at all levels of governance and media, and even, practically speaking, education, to make sure you are not aware of global heating. And it's working. And because I'm aware of the physics of global heating, I can see the conspiracy. And I can see that it's working. Because people don't get it. And if people didn't get gravity, then they would jump out of airplanes without a parachute. And they would die by the millions. And because they don't understand and they can never comprehend, will not be allowed to comprehend global heating, they're going to die by the millions. Because it's physics. You see? It's physics. There's no escape. You can't just ignore it. You see? When the Titanic, the ocean liner Titanic started taking on water, there were lots of people in denial. But that didn't stop the Titanic from sinking. There were lots of people who were telling themselves and each other, well, it says on the ticket right here, unsinkable. Well, that wasn't true. And they went down with the ship. We should not be like that with global heating. But we are. It's as if the captain of the Titanic and the crew and everyone else said, oh, this ship can't sink. Don't worry about the fact that the ship is tilting in the ocean. Don't worry about the fact that the rich people are getting on the lifeboats. And pay no attention to that. Those are just rich people. They're eccentric. We can never figure out what they're going to do next. They're getting in the lifeboats and they're sailing away and they're waving goodbye. But don't worry about it. The ship is tilting, but it does that normally. See, that will be the level of conspiracy that we're dealing with right now in global heating. The wealthy are getting to the lifeboats and sailing away and waving goodbye. And we're stuck on the ship, believing that the ship can't sink, because that's what they wanted you to believe. It is a conspiracy, and it's working. Now, where are they sailing off to? Well, they're sailing off to the future. They get to have the future. They're going to make sure they have the future. They're going to make sure they will be present in the future. Just as it was with the people on the Titanic. Just as it would be if people were jumping out of the back of an airplane without parachutes, the people who actually understood gravity would just sit back and wait for everyone else to jump out of the airplane. Well, there they go. All these people that don't understand how gravity works, jumping out of the airplane. Yep. Now I have the airplane all to myself. That's the setup, folks. You're being told the gravity isn't real, and you're being shown to the back of the airplane where the hatch is open, and you're being encouraged to jump out because then you'll sprout feathers and you'll fly like a bird. That's the story we're getting on global heating. It's an actual conspiracy. It's directed from the top by the governments, with collusion from mainstream media, also alternative media, so the internet, right? YouTube, all the others, Facebook, everything else. Academia, to some extent, and even scientists are in on the conspiracy. Now, conspiracy, the actual word conspiracy means to breathe, to inhale, to inspire, right? You inhale. Conspiracies. A breath. Con means together. So conspiracy means to breathe together. And that means there's a coordinated effort to unify your message around one key pillar. And the key pillar with regards to global heating is that there's more than one, and depending on where you are siloed in your information space, you have heard one of these, maybe two, okay? And most people never get past one. And the analysis you get from politicians is either it's completely a fake, it's a hoax. Sometimes some politicians will say, well, it isn't a hoax, but we need more data, which is also soothing. Oh, okay, so there's not really a problem here. We're going to collect more data. Well, great. Well, then they'll collect more data and they'll let us know if there's a problem. Academia just doesn't have to talk about it at all. College professors, curricula, all of it. They don't have to talk about it at all. And they have good reasons for doing that. And then the media are kind of in the same boat as academia. They don't have to talk about this. They choose which stories they're going to run, and they choose which slant they're going to put on that story. Is this just interesting, or is this a problem, or is this a disaster, or is it a hoax going the other direction, right? So depending on where you've been, if maybe you watch a lot of news, but you don't read any scientific papers or pay any attention to scientific work. Okay, so that's your silo, and you're going to hear what they want to tell you, and you'll never hear what the scientists are telling you. Or maybe you're a politics junkie, and you hear everything that comes out of Donald Trump, and yeah, that's your belief system. Okay, or maybe there's other politicians that you listen to. And I trust me, I've listened to a lot of Democrats, a lot of progressives, and they don't go here. They do not go here, period, full stop. We're not going to talk about this. So it almost, for my purposes, it almost doesn't matter what side of politics you're listening to. Trump will happily, repeatedly tell you it's a hoax, and people will come away laughing and saying, those scientists, they don't know anything. But some people will hear from the Democrats, and what are the Democrats saying, or the progressives in any country are saying? They're saying, we have a handle on this, we're going to innovate, we're going to do something at the last minute, we know what we're doing, we're going to get more data, we're going to do the sciencey thing, it's not a hoax, we're taking this seriously, and they do nothing. And that's what the politicians want. They don't want to do anything because they're wedded to business as usual. That's all they can do is business as usual. That's all they know. Politicians are not that smart. They're just not that smart. They're average people who have a desire or a talent, if you rather, for politics. But they're just average Joes. There's not a lot of climate scientists in political power. There's not even a lot of scientists at all. And sometimes what you end up with, sciencey people, are people in medicine or geoengineering or electrical engineering or technology, right? Coders and people like that. Not real scientists. These are not sciences. They're areas of work. They're knowledge work. They're whatever. And I don't want to diss the physicians out there, but they're not doing science, and they're certainly not doing climate science. So although they got PhDs after their name and they're in there and they sound real smart and they're talking about smart things, they're within their silo, within their narrow expertise, they're smart and they can do something. Climate science is all over the place. It's really hard to speak to this topic, from a narrow focus like being an MD or being a PhD or being an engineer. Unless you're a climate scientist and you've been at it for a while, you just can't put your head around it. It's too big. It's as big as the planet, people. I mean, can we agree on that? Climate science is actually as big as the planet. Let's all agree on that for now. Let's start with that. Let's do some science. The conspiracy, again, is you're not hearing these things. They're not telling you. And it's either because they're just not aware, not educated in the right field, and that can be a thing. You can be a PhD and not be educated in the right field to talk about this, or because they don't want to talk about it, or because it's going to destroy their political career, or it's going to destroy their profits, or it's going to get them fired from their job, or it's going to get them turned out of the university into the streets. So there's lots of reasons why people don't want to talk about this. So I'm going to talk about it, right? Because that's what I do. I'm not afraid of anything. I'm an absolute fucking savage. So here we go. Let's talk about it. My book is still on sale at Amazon.com. The link is in the description. It was 100 days. It's what happens when civilization finally collapses under the weight of its own contradictions. So there are mechanisms for civilizational collapse, just like there was a mechanism for the Titanic hitting an iceberg. There are ways in which these things happen. Where did the iceberg come from? Why was the Titanic on that course? What was it about the steel that allowed it to break like that? And how about how much water was coming in? And what about the pumps? Okay, you could go into the details of how the Titanic sank, and people have written, entire tomes, entire curricula based, talking about the Titanic. I had to do something similar for this book. This book talks about the collapse of civilization. What were the mechanisms? Why did it happen? And then from that plausible, okay, I'm doing speculations, speculative science. Okay, I'm a scientist. So I can do that. I can pull that off. I can actually pull that off. I'm pretty good at that kind of thing. Speculative science that leads to the collapse of civilization, that then leads to a period of time when humans have to figure their shit out fast. Okay? And this novel is about the first 100 days of that. Now, even towards the end of the novel, the narrator, the author of the novel, who is acting like a journalist. I mean, I'm the author, but in the book, there's a journalist who is creating a series of journal entries, 100 of them. Except I repeat one day twice, so it turns out to be 101, a bonus day. Okay. You buy the book, maybe you'll notice the day I repeated. I can't remember what it is. Buy the book, figure it out. 101 days of actual entries. And at the end of that period of time, the author, the journalist, says that actually 100 days, we're just barely getting started. We have to do this 100 times. That's 10,000 days. And I'll save you the math. That's a bit over 27 years. So generational change. The novel is only 1/100th of the work that has to be done after the collapse of civilization. It's pretty harrowing, but in the end, it's also fairly optimistic. I am not really a doomer. I am a realist, and I know that humans can do things. I know humans can make changes, not on a large scale, because we're not doing that, and that's what this video is about. We're not doing the work, but when there has been a massive collapse and humanity collapses down to manageable numbers, which are nothing left, then the nothing left part of humanity has enough bandwidth to figure out how to do things. Yeah, get the book, read the book. It's kind of the setup to what I'm talking about today. Nobody understood. Not the setup. It's kind of the follow-up to what I'm talking about today. So that's the book. Buy the book because you'll be happy you did. Let's talk about what they're not talking about. This is the conspiracy. Everything I'm going to say today, you will never hear anything about. Even though everything I'm going to say today, it is true, it is data-driven, we have the receipts. I'm going to show you the receipts. Now, you don't have to believe them, of course. You can say I made the whole thing up. But it's a lot of people making this up. This is millions of people conspiring, breathing together to make this up. And it's just easier to believe that it's data. It came from the satellites. It was processed, but it wasn't altered. And there you go. So let's just look at some data, shall we? And what do we got going on here? So this is my favorite picture these days. You're going to see this a lot. If you've watched my other videos, you will have seen this and you'll have an idea of what's going on here. But I will explain it for people who have not. So this is, okay, where's my drawing tool? We'll do this right. Okay. These are the continents. So just to give you your orientation, this is the continent of South America. Okay. This is the continent of Africa. Do you have your orientation now? Okay. This is the North American continent. And yes, Mexico is part of North America. It goes all the way to Alaska and all the way across the Canadian archipelago. This is North America. And Australia. We love our Aussies down under. We love them. Right. And here's little New Zealand over here. And then tiny, tiny, tiny little Hawaii. I can't even circle it. It's so small. There we go. There's tiny Hawaii. So here are the Greenland. Okay, let's put Greenland up here. Looks huge. It's not. That's just a distortion of the map. And here's the UK. And here's Europe. But as you see, Europe is not a continent. They call it the European subcontinent. But the Europeans get their own continent. Oh, did I not include the Scandinavian nations? That was wrong. That was so wrong. Or maybe the Scandinavians don't want to be part of the EU. I don't know. And then here's Saudi Arabia down here. I'm enjoying myself here, right? And then I want to change color just to make a point. Okay. And this is the Straits of Hormuz. And here are Bab al-Mandab. And here is the Panama Canal. And what else? Choke points do we have to look at? Anyway, that's a bunch of choke points. Now, what do I want to point out here? What's going on with this map? Everything that I didn't outline Russia and China, but I think you get the point now. Everything that's not outlined is ocean. Everything not outlined is ocean. And what's going on with the oceans is what's called a marine heat wave. Now, you haven't heard anything about that, and you never will. You'll never hear anything about the marine heat wave. Well, maybe in 3 years. Maybe in 3 years, the marine heat wave is going to be such an absolute shit show in 3 years that they just can't hide it anymore. They just suddenly have to talk about it. And they'll say, well, you know, since 2023, there's been a marine heat wave, but it was never a big deal. Excuse me, clear my throat. Yeah, well, it's just now a big deal. Well, we could have talked about it in 2023, but it was just, we just didn't really know. We didn't understand, you know, excuse. But this is what's been going on for a while now. This is absolute ruin. And they're not talking about it. What are they talking about? Let's look at the little space that they are willing to talk about. I'll use purple. They want to talk about this little space here. Is purple not the best color? I guess it's not the best color. This little space right here is the area of study for the El Nino phenomenon. It's called, well, it has several names. There's a Nino 4 region out here, and there's a Nino 3 region in here, and then there's a Nino 1 and 2 region over here. I'm not drawing this right, obviously. This is supposed to be over here. And so they talk about them as Nino 4, Nino 3, Nino 2, Nino 1. But the part they study for the El Nino phenomenon, which you're going to hear about a whole bunch this year, it's going to be an absolute shit show. That's all focused on this part that I've outlined in purple. And in particular, a single number derived from a single spot on the Earth right about here. They have a little spot right there. So they're going to take this entire map of marine heat wave, which is real. This is data, folks, which is real. And they're going to limit themselves very deliberately. We're going to limit it's like it's a conspiracy. Oh, imagine that. They're going to very deliberately limit themselves. We're just going to look at this little line, this little vertical line right here. And it's not even a line. It's a point. I'll go to a different color. It's a point right there. It's a point. It's actually a single point. And the way they derive that point is they take averages from all around the Nino study area, which is all the purple, and then they derive that down to an average tiny little number, one number. But I want you to ignore that one number for now, because that's all you're going to hear about. You're going to hear about the Nino 3.4 index, and it's at 2.2, or it's at 2.5, or it's a Godzilla El Nino, or it's an uncharted El Nino. All of that is based on this one little point that I drew right here, the little blue dot, okay? And they're going to talk about this in extremity, and they're never going to mention what else is going on here. What else is going on here? Well, what else is going on here is a shit show. There is a global marine heat wave going on. And you can study El Nino and La Nina. You can study the Nino region. You can study the 3.4 region if you want, and the little dot in this central Pacific on the equator. You can study these things, and it's perfectly valid to do that. And let me show you something about why it's perfectly valid to do that. Because for a time, it didn't matter. Yes, this is the map I want. This is also world global marine heat wave, or marine temperatures. I'm going to roll this back to the year 1982. That's the earliest data we have for the temperatures of the sea surface of the Earth and the anomalies. The blue areas and deeper blue, darker blue, are anomalously cold. Okay? And the white areas are normal, and the salmon to orange to later yellow are well, red. It goes. You can see the chart down here. It goes orange to dark red and back into salmon, and then it actually goes back to white. You just have to know how to read these charts. White appears more than once, but that's just how it is. Back in 1982, the oceans were pretty much average. There really wasn't much of an anomaly in any given year. And I can run this slider forward so you can look at 1983, but you can see there are some events. See, 1982. This is an El Nino event. It's the same thing. Can I go back to here? It's the same region on the planet. And they had an El Nino event, a anomalously hot event back in 1982-83. So we can run this forward again, and then it disappears. Then it's gone because it's periodic. It oscillates back and forth. It's complicated, but it can be complicated. This is Earth system dynamics. It's fine. It can be as complicated as it needs to be. We can't change it. It's just complicated. Oh well, that means it's a hoax. No, it means it's fucking complicated. Okay. And okay, fine. This is not general public knowledge. They don't teach this in grade school. They don't teach this in high school. I get that part. It's complicated. It takes time to understand it. And typical classroom, even college level classrooms don't have time. You have to have a master's degree or a PhD in climatology before you even get to this. Am I making myself clear? I understand it's complicated. You also understand it's going to kill you. Complication can kill you. The Titanic should not have sunk. What was that about? That iceberg should not have been there. What was that about? It's complicated, right? It's complicated. And killed people. And this is complicated. And it will kill you. Because it's complicated. Does any of this make sense? You can't handle the complication. I can only handle the complication because I've been looking at this for like 30 years. And there are people out there with master's degrees and PhDs in climatology who can understand this complication. I mean, we don't understand all of it. We're surprised all the time. Oh, by the way, we are frequently surprised by what's going on in this system that's too complicated to understand. We're doing our best, okay? Can you give us credit for doing our best? Is that okay? We're doing our best here. But it's complicated. And the complication is lethal because watch what happens. Watch what happens. The oceans are still about the same. This is another El Nino event. Again, it's the same thing. That same region with the little blue dot, okay, was orange again. Anomalously hot. That's what El Nino is. And we can keep going. And you see it, but from one year to the next, the oceans are about the same. They don't change much. I want to emphasize that. Normalcy bias is not always wrong. There is a place for normalcy bias. There is a place for just kind of assuming, well, it'll always be like this, or it's always been like this. I mean, that on long enough timelines, that's balderdash. That's laughably inaccurate. But on short enough timelines, like a generation, yes, well, it's always kind of been like this. So normalcy bias has a place, but normalcy bias will get you killed. The captain thought he understood icebergs in the North Atlantic. He didn't. And it got people killed. Okay, going for 1991. A little more red than usual. Okay, a little bit hotter. 1991, let's go forward. Yeah, 1996. I'm deliberately taking my time here because I want to show you the data. Now, 1997-98 was another powerful El Nino year. Let's see if I can very carefully scroll through this. You can kind of see the heat coming in off of South America, right? This was a big deal. This one was a barn burner, okay? Oh, a La Nina, which is colder than normal. Again, they're cyclical. They take turns. They replace each other. Still, mostly the oceans are about normal, but you're starting to see some red creeping into this. 1999. There's a lot of red on this map. Should we go back quickly? Well, there's still a lot of small patches, but by the time you get up here, there's some pretty big patches of red. It's getting hot. And this is 2003. And about, as a rule of thumb, as just round figures, about the year 2000, things really became unhinged in the climate. The climate engine started to rattle and bang and show signs of destabilizing. Well, we still didn't know what was coming. Well, now we do, because now it's the future, and we can look at the future and say, well, now this is the present. But back in 2003, they didn't know. It's fine that they didn't know. Or if they knew something, they thought it was 300 years away. Well, it wasn't 300 years away. It was, less than 3 decades. It was 2 decades. So, a lot more red. Okay, this is data. Sea surface temperatures. A lot more red. A lot of red. I'm just kind of stopping at random. 2015 was an El Nino. Let's go straight to 2015. There it is. And let's see if I can zero in on this. That's a pretty serious El Nino event. But look how much red there is on the map. It's getting hot everywhere. Everywhere. It's a marine heat wave. It's noticeable. It's significant. Really hard to discount this as data. It gets worse. Oh, yes. Oh, did I mention? Yes, it gets worse. This is 2015. That was a serious El Nino. Let's scroll through that. Hey, it was a big deal. This was a big deal. There was another one in 2023. Well, let's just keep going. There's a lot of red on this map, people. There's a lot of excess heat. Where is it coming from? It's coming from the greenhouse effect. It heats the atmosphere, and the atmosphere then transfers the heat to the oceans. And the oceans get hot. And the oceans, in some ways, are saving us from the worst of global heating, because the oceans can absorb the heat, and they absorb like 90% of the heat. So the oceans are huge. It's 3/4 of the planet's surface. So the oceans, since they can absorb so much heat, they are doing so. But that's creating a marine heat wave, and it never goes away. It only gets worse. We are being saved from global heating by the oceans, but the oceans are almost certainly running out of opportunity to do that. They're too hot. When you get to a certain temperature, it's harder to absorb heat. There you go. It's getting hot, folks. This is 2019. This wasn't even an El Nino year. It's mostly red now, and there are pockets of really hot, anomalously hot water. The next El Nino is 2023. There it is. It was kind of putsy. And you see, it's not even as big or as bad as some of the others. But look what's happening out. Look what's happening up here in Japan. This is crazy. Again, these are not temperatures. These are temperature anomalies. So these are departures from normal. So if you live in that area, a departure from normal will be sensible to you. You can feel it. You can sense it. When I say sensible, I mean you can feel it. Okay. And there's a big marine signal off of Japan. There's another one off of the eastern part of Canada, and then here's the El Nino that happened in 2023. But there's red everywhere. It's hard to say that. Oh well, there was an El Nino event. There was a marine heat wave, and this was 2023. And guess what? It gets worse. Get rid of my drawing tool. And 2023, 2025 was the hottest year on record for the year, which is both land and sea. And this is where things are now. Okay? This is where things are now. And since this is now, I can very quickly go back and show you where it was in 1982. Okay? Look at this and look at this. 1982, 2026. Nobody's talking about this. There's a marine heat wave. And when you start getting hot and muggy air, if in a maritime country like the UK or Spain, right? You're surrounded by water, or even the east coast of the US, Hawaii, places like that. When you start getting hot, muggy air that's high humidity and it's not as cool as it should be, it's because the water around you is hot. And that leads to evaporation, which also heats the air and puts more moisture in the air, and then that moisture carries heat to another place. That's how the planet distributes heat, through evaporation. So this marine heat wave eventually presents itself as sensible heat. Again, you can sense it either with a thermometer or just with your body. These marine heat waves will manifest themselves as sensible heat on land. We are having massive heat waves right now, everywhere, on all continents. Well, okay, it's seasonal, right? When you're in your summer, and the northern hemisphere is in their summer now, and the southern hemisphere is in their winter. So when the northern hemisphere is in their summer, then of course they have hot days. And oh, well, it's because it's summer. Yeah, but trust me. And then there's data for this, okay? I mean, you know there's data because these heat waves are breaking records, and they're not breaking them by a 10th of a degree or a 20th of a degree. They're breaking records by 2 or 3 degrees C at a time, for weeks on end, over and over. There have been a series of heat waves that hit the UK, England, and the US, which is where I get most of my information. But you think this isn't happening in Russia? You think this isn't happening in China? You think this isn't happening in places that we don't really collect a lot of data on? You think this isn't happening in places that, don't report the data? Of course it's happening. It's happening everywhere. And there's almost no ocean that isn't participating in the marine heat wave. And we're about to have a major, massive El Nino event. I don't know what that's going to cause to the Earth dynamic system. It's very difficult to say. People think they know. Right now, we're off the map. We're off the edge of the map now, folks. We do not have data from the past to help us predict what's going to happen with this next El Nino. Even the El Nino itself that is forming is predicted to be off the chart. So not only do we have a marine heat wave that's off the chart, okay? Remember, this was the chart, okay? Blue, 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 some red, mostly blue, blue, average, colder than average. This was the chart. That's our so-called normal, although you have to get, for normal, you'd have to go back to 1850. But, this is the data. So we're going to call this normal, and then we're going to go to this. Now, what do you call this? Now, this is really bad. No, it can't be that bad. Well, you think it can't be that bad because they're not talking about it. And that's a conspiracy. They're conspiring not to talk about this. And everyone has their reason for not talking about this. They could. There's the data. They could talk about this. But they won't because they don't want to. And they all have different reasons for not wanting to do it. And all their reasons are sound for each of them. Every college professor who doesn't talk about this has a reason. Every researcher who's even doing climate science who doesn't want to talk about this has a reason. Every politician has a reason. Every media outlet has a reason. Every alternative, Snapchat, Facebook, YouTuber, influencer has a reason for not talking about this. They've all got reasons. And all the reasons are different. But that doesn't matter. It's still a conspiracy. And if you went to all of them and you asked them, so why aren't you talking about this? They'll say, reasons. They might not even tell you what their reasons are, but they all have the same answer. Reasons. Yeah, I don't want to talk about that. I don't know enough about it. The science is out. The data is not definitive. We need more data. We need more work. We need more simulations. It's a hoax. It's fear mongering. Everyone has a reason, and they could simply tell you, I don't want to talk about it because reasons. That could be their answer, and that's the conspiracy. Everyone has a reason to not talk about this. I'm talking about it because I have a reason to talk about it. I'm here to point out there's a global conspiracy at all levels of government, all levels of academia, all levels of science, research, actual climatology, okay? All levels of media, all levels of influencers, every possible place where someone has an audience, someone has an opportunity to say something. They've got bandwidth, they've got platform time, they've got control of people's attention. Every place where they could talk about this, they all have a reason not to. And that makes it a conspiracy. Whether they all get together in the same smoke-filled back room in Davos and talk about their plans to coordinate not talking about it, it doesn't matter. They're not talking about it. And you can have conspiracies that are simply conspiracies of convenience. This happens with price fixing all the time. 2 retailers, or 6 or 8 or 10 retailers, Oh, we're seeing this with the price of fuel right now. They don't really have to get together in a smoke-filled room at Davos to talk about what the price of gasoline should be this week or next week. They can all simply look around. The prices, oh, they just raised their price. Well, if they did that, then I guess I can raise my price by twice that amount. And then the other guy says, oh, look, he raised his gas price by twice the amount. Well, I can raise it again then. And it's not that they're getting together over expensive Scotch whiskey and expensive cigars and planning the downfall of the world by conspiring. They're just looking at each other's business model. And everybody has a business model around this. Okay? They all have a feeling about this, what I'm just showing you right now. They have a feeling about this. And they all have a reason not to talk about it. Nor will they. Ever. They will never talk about this. Because the same thing that's holding them back now will be doubly important 2 years from now to hold them back. Because it's like any other lie. And that's what withholding information is. It's a kind of a lie. It's called a lie by omission. You're not committing a lie by deliberately saying it, but you're not saying the thing you should say. I don't know. Reasons. I don't want to talk about it. I don't know enough about it. Okay? Maybe you do know about it, but you decide you're not going to talk about it, and that's a lie by omission. You omit to talk about the thing. You just decide you're not going to. And and again, you don't have to have a bunch of people in a smoke-filled room at Davos all deciding they're not going to talk about it. People just are worried. And they're worried for their career and their profits and their political standing and everything, and everything else. Their research budget. They're all worried about their grants, and they're all worried about how they're going to look in polite society if they talk about this. They're all looking at each other and saying, you're not talking about it. And you're not talking about it. Well, why the fuck would I talk about it? It's a conspiracy of omission, which is the easiest kind. And history is full of these kinds of conspiracies, things we just don't talk about. We just don't talk about them. Nope. I'm not saying it never happened. I'm not saying it's a hoax. I'm not. It's in the history books. It's in the scientific literature, but I'm just not going to talk about it. I don't have to talk about it. I can choose what I want to talk about, and I'm not going to talk about that. And he says, I'm not talking about it. That other guy's not going to talk about it. He sees me and I'm not talking about it. And there must be a reason for me not talking about it. And he has his own reason. And we don't have to even compare notes. He just says, this guy's not talking about it. And so I'm not going to talk about it. Nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody wants to go first. All right? Nobody wants to go first. You've seen that part of the documentary about the penguins, where the penguins they all have to go out to sea to eat. Okay, and they all have to do it pretty much at the same time, and so they crowd on the edge of the ice floe, right? And they're going to jump in the water, but they know what's in the water. They know what's down there. Orcas and predator seals and God only knows what else. And so they're going to go in there. Yeah. Well, I don't want to go first. I can see what's swimming down there. Yeah, I see what you're doing. Okay, and none of them want to go first. They crowd. Pretty soon there's 1,000 penguins all jostling on the edge of the ice. Nobody wanted to go first. And then finally one of them gets pushed in or jumps in, and then they all jump in. Okay, well, there's an advantage to doing that because you kind of overwhelm the predators. You wait, and then you all jump in. So we could have a situation where everybody's waiting. Wait. I'm not going to go first. And then sometime in the future, they all jump in. That might happen. But by then, it's too late. For our purposes, for this discussion, it's too late. Because what are they waiting for? They're waiting for it to become so obvious that not admitting it means you're stupid. It's so obvious that saying it's a hoax is retarded. And people will laugh at you. And they'll say, you're not fit for office. Now, 10 years ago, when you said it was all a hoax, we voted you in. We kept voting you in because that was the right story. We wanted to hear the happy ending. We wanted the adult fairy tale, that it's all a hoax. Or needs more science. There's lots of ways you can deny this. There's hard denial and there's soft denial, right? Well, we need more data. Science is not finished. The science is out, right? And, well, we just going to study it more. Nothing wrong with studying it more, right? And when we study it more for like 1,000,000 years, after 1,000,000 years of studying it, well, maybe we'll be able to say something. But for now, we're not going to say anything because, hey, the adult decision here is to study it more. So these are all the same ways of saying that we're not going to talk about this. And then one day, it's stupid to say things like that. Now, I would claim that with this kind of data floating up now, and this has been going on for a long time. I mean, what did I have to do? I would look at this. What? When did this start? We don't, here? How long ago did we start having marine heat waves that we had to really worry about? You could probably go back here somewhere and say, well, it really became a shit show right about here. I could just say that's when things went off the rails. What is this? 2015. I could say 2015 was the year when the data came in. Because after 2015, it doesn't get any better, okay? Maybe there's a couple of moments here and somewhere where it gets a little better, but you can see it just doesn't. After 2015, it's like, nope. Normalcy bias isn't working here, folks. No. Oh, definitely not, okay? And back to today, no. Okay, so when did the data come in? When did the data arrive? When did we had science settled? I don't know. 10 years ago? Yeah, maybe even further back than that. But they'll tell you to this day, and they'll tell you for the next couple of years, because they're the penguins on the edge of the ice, and they don't want to go first. They'll tell you, science is hard. It takes money. It takes time. Science is out. Like the jury is out. We just don't know. And let's just keep studying it. Okay, let's just keep studying it. And what are you supposed to get out of that? Keep studying it? Well, I don't know. We're just going to study it. When are you going to stop studying it? When are you going to start talking about it? And the answer is, well, we don't want to. Because reasons. Because I'm a penguin standing on the edge of an ice floe. And I don't want to be in the water first because there's a fucking monster down there. It's going to eat me, tear my body in half if I go in the water first. If I'm the first person to point to this picture and say, folks, we have an actual catastrophe here. If I'm the first person to say that, then what? I lose my funding because I'm an alarmist. I lose my job at the university because I'm an alarmist. I get kicked out of the current federal Trump administration because I'm an alarmist. I get vilified by my friends because I'm an alarmist. Nervous Nelly, Chicken Little, sky is falling. I can't stand the ridicule, so I'm just going to sit here on the ice with the other penguins and I'm not going. I'm not going to be first. Because I saw what happened to that other guy that went first. He got torn to pieces. So, you expect me to go in the water first? No. Okay, that's a conspiracy. It's real. That shit's actually happening. Because we've seen this picture for 10 years. 10 years. And you're only hearing about it today because of me. That's the data, folks. That's what's happening to you. That's happening to you. And there's no way out. There's no escaping this. Your Titanic has hit that iceberg and you're going down, and you're not going to be going down for very long. And I don't know what happens when you go down, but I think we should be talking about this. Because if nobody aboard the Titanic ever had the conversation about lowering the lifeboats, then guess what happens? And this actually happened, by the way. They did wait too long. They did wait too long. Probably because it was supposed to be unsinkable. I mean, that was the meme. That was the thought. It's unsinkable. It says here right on the ticket, unsinkable Titanic, I paid a lot for this ticket partly because this ship is supposed to be unsinkable. So because they thought it was unsinkable, they just kept thinking it's not going to sink. And then they waited too long. And at the end, there were lifeboats still attached to the ship. That the ship was at too much of an angle to even put people in them and lower them down. There were lifeboats that went down with the ship because they waited too long. And that's the risk that we're taking. Not that we took that risk deliberately. We didn't all sit down one day at the UN or wherever we would have that sit down and say, okay, well, we're taking a risk here, but we are deliberately going to ignore this. Who was in favor of ignoring it? We didn't do that. We didn't take a vote. We didn't look at the data. We didn't have an adult discussion over a week. We didn't write a paper. We didn't have any decision at any level of humanity. Not at the national level, not at the state level, not at the provincial level, and not at the level of the UN. We never had the discussion where people raised their hands and said, yes, I want to ignore this. And just like they didn't on the Titanic. Nobody voted and said, look, it's too soon to start getting to the lifeboats. They simply didn't talk about it. It was a lie of omission. The captain lied to those people. And the people who could have gotten onto the lifeboats didn't. And the lifeboats went down with the ship. And that's the situation we are in right now. We are lying to ourselves. And there are people who have reasons for lying to you, including the scientists. I feel like there was something else I want. Oh, yes, of course. Oh, yes, of course. This piece of bullshit. Oh, baby. All right, what is this? This is what's going to kill you. This is the end of civilization. All right? This is how civilization ends. This is why it ends, and this is how it ends. And this is what's going to kill you. It's going to kill you. You personally. I'm talking to you. It's going to kill you. This chart is going to murder you, probably in your sleep. Probably in your sleep. Although there are other very creative ways that this could murder you, and but dying in your sleep is one of them. And for a lot of people, that will be what happens, because it gets too hot to survive. And a lot of the times when a region is simply too hot to survive and people manage to cope during the day, they then die at night. And you could ask any physician why that is. They managed to cope during the day, and then they went to bed, and they fell asleep, and then they died in their sleep. And it's true, a lot of the times these are elders, and a lot of times they're children, a lot of times they're people with prior conditions, but then eventually it's just everybody. It gets so hot that people just cope all day, and they're coping, and they're coping, and they're coping for day after day after day, and then finally one of those days becomes night. And they lay down in their bed, and they're fanning themselves while they're awake, and someone's fanning them while they're awake. And then finally everyone's asleep because they're exhausted by the heat. And when they lay down to go to sleep, they never wake up. Most people will die in their sleeps, and that's a fact. And entire families may die in their sleep. Entire villages will die in their sleep over one day or two. This is how it actually happens. I'm not making that up. Talk to any physician who understands heat exhaustion and internal organ failure. Just talk to them and ask them, when do people die? They die in their sleep. Oh, they also die during the day. But at least when you're awake and you're around people who are awake, and maybe people who care about you, and they're awake, and even though you're exhausted, they're taking care of you because they're awake. At night, when everyone is exhausted and they just can't keep their eyes open, they fall asleep, and then they die because they can't struggle anymore. The struggle for survival doesn't happen when you're asleep, and people die. So what is this picture? This is, it says in large letters, okay, global average temperature change. So, the left side of this is essentially the year zero, okay, the year zero. And the right side of this is essentially the year 2100. So the chart, although it goes back to year zero, it does not go to the year 2100 because we haven't got there yet. But the lower axis does go to the year 2100. Now I want to get my drawing tool and I want to draw a little bit on this. Oh, it's not working. Why is my drawing tool not working? Whoops. My drawing tool isn't working. How is this possible? Huh. Well, I can go back to this one. No, that also doesn't work. Well, do I really have to draw on this? I really want to. I thought I had this working. Hold on. I think there's another one I can use. It's this. Oh, yeah, it's the upper part of this one. Okay, so this kind of works. I'll refer back to this one. This is a longer period because this is 2,000 years. This chart here is about 200 years. So, but it's the same chart. This chart is only the latest data on this chart, because this chart is 2,000 years. But I want to point out to you, for the first half of this chart, from the year 0, which is on the far left, to about the year 900, the average global temperature, although it varied quite a bit, and there's a lot of noise in the data, and this is proxy data, so it's tree rings, ice cores, mud sample sediments from the bottom of oceans and lakes. So there's quite a bit of data, but it's not bad. This isn't bad data. So from that year 0 to about the year 900, maybe in the year 1000, though there's a lot of noise in the data, it's pretty much flat. The global average temperature was not increasing. The change was 0. That's the same way of saying different ways of saying the same thing. Then about the year 1000, the temperature change actually began to decrease. Now, people noticed that. They noticed that in the 70s, because this chart has existed for a long time. Not in the current form, because it's always being updated and made sharper. But some version of this chart has existed for 50 years or 100 years now. Certainly 50. So they started noticing it was going down. And in the 70s, I remember, I think it was the 70s, maybe it was 80s, there was talk among scientists, we're going into another ice age. And that was because they also learned about another thing, which was the Milankovitch cycles, which drive the comings and goings of glacial epochs. There's a glacial maximum, and then a glacial minimum, and then another maximum, and people began to notice that was kind of cyclical, like the ticking of a clock. And so this guy Milankovitch studied it when we finally had enough computers. We added to his work. His first work was actually done on paper. He first started describing the Milankovitch cycles, named after him, on paper, with a slide rule or whatever, a calculator. I don't know what he was doing. Later on, we came along with high-speed computers and more data, and we were able to refine the Milankovitch cycles. I could look it up. I'm not going to bother. But we knew about the Milankovitch cycles, and we knew that we were in a current glacial minimum, and therefore there was going to be another, in the future, glacial maximum, which is called, in the vernacular, an ice age. So there's going to be a cooling period. So in the 70s or 80s, they were making predictions that the Earth is going to cool and there'll be an ice age, and because it was true. Because they knew something about the Milankovitch cycles, and those were predictive, because they are predictive, because it's math. It's astrophysics, actually. It's not even the Earth system itself. It's astrophysics, orbital mechanics. And because it's math and orbital mechanics, they could predict the Milankovitch cycles into the future. And therefore they knew sometime in the future, 20,000 years, something like that, there would be another cooling trend because of orbital mechanics. And if you don't understand that, fine, I don't expect you to. It's complicated. I know that. But this trend towards cooling from about the year 1000, maybe the year 1100, down to about, and this is no coincidence, about the year 1800. What happened in 1800? What happened in 1850? What happened in 1900? The Industrial Revolution. And what did we start doing in the Industrial Revolution? Burning fossil fuels. Yep, that's what we did. Started with wood. It's not a fossil fuel, but we burned a lot of wood, okay? Burned a lot of wood, put that carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Then we burned all the forests down. Then we found the coal. And we started digging up the coal, which is harder to do. So, of course, we burned the easy stuff first, and then we dig up the coal and we burned the hard stuff. And the coal was really useful. We still burn coal to this day. And then after we burned enough coal to get industrialized, and that happened not globally, but in enough places, then we started finding oil. And oil was even more useful than coal. And then we discovered natural gas. And natural gas was just as useful as crude oil. So because of all this industrialization and all this science and all this engineering and all this money and all this wealth and all this growth and all this industrialization, mechanics and everything else, we began getting crude oil resources out of the ground, and natural gas and even coal still to this day, like it's nobody's business, except it was everybody's business. We have entire energy industries now. We didn't have energy industries before in the Industrial Revolution. We didn't even really have energy industries before 1900. And now we have energy industries. And they dominate the planet. And they tell politicians what to do about everything because they're so influential. The energy industries are running the planet now. And look what happened since about 1900. Line go up. Global average temperature change go up like a moonshot. Well, that's a hoax. Moonshot. Well, that can't be real. Moonshot. Fucker. You don't like it? Too bad. I really don't care. And I don't have any sympathy. I don't have any sympathy for people who don't like this. This is also called the hockey stick. It's called the hockey stick because it's shaped like a hockey stick. What did I have? I had a little picture here that showed the actual hockey stick, but it doesn't matter. It looks like a hockey stick. It's straight, and it has a curve up, right? And so people call this the hockey stick. And Michael Mann and a bunch of other researchers made the definitive study of global average temperature change, and they came up with what they called the hockey stick. And Michael Mann is largely attributed, and justifiably so, with having pulled this picture together for us. Now, it's true, there was a medieval warm period. Well, what's that about? Well, that only happened in Europe. What was that about? I don't know. People can tell you what that was about. But the planet as a whole, global average temperature change was going down at that point. We were heading in for an ice age. And then there was the Little Ice Age, which was also regional to Europe. Again, we only know about what happened in Europe and the UK because that's where the scientists were. This was the age of enlightenment, right? The Renaissance. They were finally throwing off religious dogma and folklore and superstition, and they were actually looking at the data. So they noticed there was a medieval warm period, and they noticed in England that there was a Little Ice Age in England. But overall, the planet wasn't really doing that. In fact, it was cooling a little bit. Well, let's not call it an ice age. It just got a little bit cold. And then what happened in 1850? What happened in the year 1900? Moonshot. So forget about your medieval warm period, which was really only England and France, and forget about your Little Ice Age, which was just kind of basically England and France. Okay, that story is over. This whole idea about the planet, global average temperature change, the planet is going into an ice age. Well, that story is over. In fact, just recently, a few years ago, I heard someone in climatology say that the ice ages, plural, when they've been going on for either 3 million or 5 million years, depending on who you talk to, the ice ages, all of the bumps caused by the Milankovitch cycles, are over. They're calling this period of time, basically the last 50 years, maybe since 1900, a terminating event. We are leaving the ice ages behind. There will still be Milankovitch cycles, and the planet will want to cool because of the tick-tock of the orbital mechanics. I'll look it up. But we're not going to have any ice ages because we have now terminated the ability for this planet to form ice. In fact, this planet is rapidly losing ice everywhere. Everywhere. No one wants to talk about that because no one wants to go first. You'll never hear this until finally all of the people who don't want to talk about this finally have to jump in and face the monsters of their own making. When finally the reasons just don't make any sense anymore. When there is no ice, or whatever the event is, they're going to have to say, well, there's no ice. Yep, and that's been going on since 2015 or so. And we didn't talk about it because we didn't want to, reasons. But now we're having to talk about it because, reasons. So they'll go from not talking about it to finally having to admit it, but by then it's too late. The Titanic is already too steep to launch the lifeboats. No one gets in the lifeboats. Could have, would have, should have, won't. We waited too long. Waited too long. This is your world, people. This is your actual world. This is the planet Earth. This is the planet Earth. This is your world. This is the latter part of the hockey stick. I can draw on this one. I don't know why I couldn't draw on the other one. Again, there's a period of somewhat stability. You need a different tool. There's a period of some stability, like from 1980 through here. we'll allow that to be a straight line. This is a clear anomaly. This is like 1997, and that was really hot. And then things start to go up. And there is some evidence now, and James Hansen has been talking about this recently. So some people are talking about this. James Hansen is talking about this. I have a lot of respect for that guy. And he says that these events kick the world, the planet, into a completely different behavior. So there was an El Nino event in 1997 that kicked the planet into a different gear, and the line go up. And then about 2015, which is right here, there was another event that kicked the planet into another gear. Line go up again. And you can say, no, that's not the way you draw a line. You draw a line straight. Lines are supposed to be straight. Can't you draw a line? You don't know anything about drawing lines, okay? Well, that works if that's what you want it to be. But the best fit, actually, of the lines is not one line. There's a straight period. There's an event. Boom. Event. And then there's a different behavior. Okay? And then, boom, an event. I misdrew that. You get the idea. And then there's another behavior. And James Hansen is now saying there's going to be in 2026, boom, another event. And then what happens? Should I draw the line? Are we going to just go with the data and extrapolate this correctly? Why don't we just do that? Shall we just... There's the line. Boom, 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 boom. That's how it works. That's how the data works. And you could say, well, that's not how it works. I've seen people draw the lines, the three lines. I've seen the one line that goes through all the data, and I've seen people come back and say, hold on, that's not the best fit. The best fit is a curved line, an exponential. And people don't understand the exponential. That's a favorite. That's the favorite famous maxim. The biggest, something like, you can look it up. The biggest failure of mankind is our failure to understand the exponential. Our normalcy bias, which we are all in the grip of, including climate scientists, wants the line to be straight. That's normalcy bias speaking. That's not the best fit. The best fit is a different line. The best fit is three lines. A line over here, then a big event, boom. Then a line over here, and then a big event that, boom, and then a line that goes up steeper, and then a big event this year, and then we'll see. We'll see. We'll just see what happens. That's the exponential. And that's why you don't have any time. You don't have any time. And that goes back to this. You can't outrun that, people. That's math. You can't outrun math. Math is just going to eat you alive. It's just going to kill you, because this line is going straight up. And if we allow that here, the highest part of this line is about the year 2000. So there's a lot of data missing here, folks. Let's just allow that this moonshot keeps going up like a, wait for it, moonshot. And what's at the end of that line? Where's that line go? It goes off the map. It goes off the chart. Nobody's talking about this because they don't want to. It's a conspiracy. Nobody wants to talk about this. And they're not going to. And finally, the Titanic will be so much at an angle, slipping beneath the waves, that it's too late to even launch the lifeboats. And that's why I'm so angry. Now, in theory, line go up, whether it's this line, which is over 2,000 years, or if it's this line, which is just the last 20, 40 years, the last 40 years, whichever line you like, whichever line gives you the worst heebie-jeebies, right? Whichever line you want. This line is the end of civilization. That's it. What is lurking for us at the end of this moonshot is the end of civilization. Now, normally a moonshot would take you to the moon, and you'd be a hero, and the flag, and the hitting a golf ball on the moon. That's what a moonshot is supposed to do. You come back a hero, you get a medal, you get a parade, right? That's what a moonshot normally does. This moonshot, line go up, kills everybody. Now, I don't think it kills everybody. I think humans are resilient enough that we'll still have...
Someone's at the entryway doorbell.
I think some of us will survive this. Maybe 1% of the current population survives this. I'll save you the math. 1% is 80 million people. But that's probably optimistic. It'll be something less than that. 50 million, 10 million. 8 million, again, save you the math. That's 1/10 of 1%. 8 million people. This planet, before fossil fuels, could not support more than about 200 or 250 million people. There was like a hard break at that point. But since fossil fuels, we've been able to get 8,000 million people. I think we go back. Because of this line, we are going to be battered. We're going to be battered until we collapse under the weight of climate physics. We're going to be destroyed by heat and crop failures and floods and sea level rise and droughts and heat that kills you in the night. Heat. We're going to be decimated, annihilated by line go up. And nobody's talking about that. Because reasons. They all have their reasons. And they don't have to get together to talk about the reasons. And they don't all have to have the same reason. This is just group behavior. Nobody wants to go first. It's the penguins on the edge of the ice floe. And nobody wants to go in the water first because there's monsters in there. Those things are going to eat you. So no penguin wants to be the first to go. And so we're going to continue to ignore this. We're going to continue to ignore this. That's not the right thing. We're going to continue to ignore this. We're going to continue to ignore this because the conspiracy of silence, which is a lie of omission, serves everybody. And nobody has to go first. We will talk about this. Oh, yes, we will talk about this. Just as they finally had to talk about the fact that the Titanic was, in fact, sinking. They finally had to address that. And they got some people into lifeboats because it was sinking. And they lowered the lifeboats into the water because the Titanic was sinking. And people were afraid because the Titanic was sinking. And they finally had the discussion about getting people into lifeboats, but they didn't do it soon enough. You see. And the ship went down with the lifeboats still attached because they couldn't launch them. That's us. This is us. This is us. This is us. Lying to ourselves. Lying to ourselves. Yeah, it makes me angry. It pisses me off. I'm a scientist. I know what's going on. I can see this shit. You can see it. When I point it out to you, you can see it. You don't need a PhD to see what's happening. Do I have to go back to this? Get rid of that. This is how it was. Data. This is how it was. Data. This is how it is. It is this way. This is how it is. What the fuck is wrong with the human species? We're not going to do it. We're just not going to do it. We're not going to do it. It's going to get worse than this, folks. I mean, what part of this line ever changes except that it goes up? What part of this line is going to work for you? No part of this line ever works for you, ever. What part of this graph ever works for you? Nothing in this graph ever works for you. I have the wrong window. Sorry. So that's the truth. That's the truth. And that's the conspiracy to hide the truth. Not that they ever got together at Davos to talk about hiding the truth. They never did that. But every penguin has a reason not to be the first into the water. And they have the same reason. Or they have different reasons. But they all stand on the edge of the ice and they don't go into the water. And this is what it is. Where all of our scientists and governments and committees and media and academia, and all the experts and all the people who know this. There's the data. This is a public website. There it is, right there. Okay, everybody who has this data. I might as well be on the screen. Everybody has this data. You have this data. You can go here and find it. We don't talk about it. That's what I got. I got other things to do. But I had to do this. We're in denial, and it's a conspiracy. It is a real conspiracy. It's an actual conspiracy. And you're stuck in the middle of it. And it's going to kill people. And it's going to kill you. You're not going to get a lifeboat. Most of the lifeboats on the Titanic went down with the ship. Don't die.